Hi, guys. I'm so excited to have my friend Alexia here. We are about to talk about letting love in. So, if you have any interest in that, you might want to stay around. So, hi,
Hi.
I'm so thankful you would come on with me today. So, Alexia, you're one of like my star students, if I'm allowed to say that. Like, you have just grown in this letting love in thing. And I'd love for you just to share just a little bit about your journey with letting love in. I mean, you're married, you have a business called Mama with a Calling, you have a darling son, and yet there's still a piece of you that needed to let some love in. So, tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to talk about this because this program that God led me to, as I've told you before, but it was life-changing in so many ways, in ways that I didn't know that I needed it. So it kind of started when I had heard about your program and I just felt like God was telling me to join and I didn't know why because I wasn't looking for another program at the time. And then, you had kind of reached out to me and said, "Hey, I think maybe you should join my program." And even though you were already in it anyway, it was just this cool story where I was like, okay, I think God is saying this, which was a really interesting like experience for me because it was kind of the opposite of the way I normally do things. Like it's not something I was like seeking out. But then because I knew that, I went in saying, "Okay, God, what do you have for me?" And then once I got there, I was like, this is crazy cool because it was not what I was expecting because it was letting love in, was learning how to let God in, letting God love me as his daughter, seeing him as my heavenly father. And I was just like, the amount of like I had a lot of work there to still do about my own confidence and really just by the end, I would say, even like looking back at my journal, still I look at it and I'm like, I can see at the beginning, I'm reading the words and I'm like, really? I thought that? Because now I've just grown. I still have tons to grow, right? But I just grew so much. And overall, it's just the feeling of being loved, like letting God love me. And that's what he did with the children of Israel in the wilderness, right? They had to learn to let God love them and take care of them. And it's like, a lot of times, I mean, I went through my whole life for a whole bunch of reasons that I figured out through this program that I've spent a lot of my life taking care of myself. And
Mm.
so I've had to, learn to sort of surrender to that. But I didn't realize there was this other part, which was just learning how to let God love me, which included learning how to love how he made me.
Yay! Oh my gosh, that is so powerful, Alexia. And that is so true. I think sometimes the enemy like tries to get us to like not like ourselves, right? I mean, it's a great tactic of his because like if we're kind of against ourselves in some ways, or like you were just saying, we don't really like the way he made us, or we don't think we like the way he made us, then it's harder for us to step into what he's calling us to do. So I think that's like such a cool revelation that you just talked about, how like it wasn't only about letting God love you, which sounds so simple and it's like obvious. Sometimes it feels like, duh, that's obvious. But then when you start to do it, you're like, wow, this feels really good. So I just love that you made that connection. Yeah, that's so sweet and special and powerful. And it's interesting, Lexia, because sometimes I think people think I'm only talking to single people, because letting love in, oh, this girl's single, she must help single people find relationships. But the funny part is I am still single. So I don't necessarily help people find relationships because I haven't done that in a romantic sense. But you're married, you've been married for a number of years, you have a son, but there was still something like there's still some love that you feel like was really filling your heart through this program. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's interesting because, you know, I can see how people might think of that, I guess, when it comes to mine. But to me, potentially because I heard some of what you're doing already. I didn't think it was romantic love at all. That's not even what I thought it was. But I didn't know. I knew it was something about I thought it was about loving myself. So even though, yeah, I've been married over 10 years, we have a son, um, but because like I knew that I didn't fully love myself. And like I said, it's still a journey, but that's been something that God's just been working on me anyway, which is why he called me to the program in the first place, because I didn't know that was a piece of the puzzle that I needed, because it impacts so many things in your life. Like learning how to let God love me, like you were saying, it sounds so simple. But a lot of times as Christians, we are thinking like, yes, God loved me. He sent Jesus, or he loves us. He sent Jesus to die on the cross for our sins. Like we say that statement,
Mhm.
but it almost still feels like this global, like, yeah, he saved me like out of heaven and out of hell and into heaven. And like, but when this program taught me how to learn to that he loves me as an individual, that he
Mm.
created me individually, that he cares about my quirks, that he care things that I'm like, nobody wants to listen to me talk on and on. Well, God does, because he made me that way. Or all my questions, he's like, yeah, I want to hear them. And it actually, that confidence there in being loved is kind of like when you have daddy issues as like a person, right? Well, when you like heal those through this program, and learning how to let God heal all those wounds, it impacts your actual relationships,
Mhm.
because then it affects my marriage. Like I don't need my husband to fill in all those gaps for me, that are missing or something like that. I can be okay in who I am, be okay in who he is. It can just add to that story. So for me, I wasn't thinking that it was romantic, but I think that it definitely impacted my relationships in that way.
Wow. Wow. That's so cool to hear because, a little bit of my journey, just for those that are watching, I started writing like 10 years ago and I was just writing. I had a blog called Putting the Pencil Down. So I was kind of learning to like release control of my own life. I was learning to learning to trust God in a way, learning to let him write the story of my life, which is what he said to me through another person, a friend, a mentor. And so I started on that journey. And so I would write a lot, just like on a blog, write about my feelings. And I would call it Worry, Wonder, and Mini Meltdowns. And that was almost the name of my book, was Worry, Wonder, Mini Meltdowns. And over time, God kept shifting the book and shifting the book and shifting the book. And he had me write the whole book. And I kept trying to come up with a name because I love control. And he was just like, Linz, can you trust me that when it's time for the title, I'll give it to you? And that was a trusting thing because it didn't make sense. It's not really logical. It's probably not how the book gurus teach you, but it was what God was saying. So I was like, all right. So I, wrote the whole book. And then at the end, I had this really supernatural experience with him where I, had felt like just rejected and abandoned in my life. I mean, for bazillions of reasons, which we all, I think, kind of struggle sometimes with those things. And, Jesus showed up on this like massive cross and like was like, would you believe I did this just for you, Lindsay? You know, and I just was like having a breakdown in this like stairwell at this church. It was so weird. And then he's like, will you let my love in? And I was like, and then later he's like, that's the name of the book. And I was like, so I didn't really come up with this program, like, okay, let me come up with this program about learning
Hmm.
to teach people how to let love in. It honestly was something like God was like, you need to know how to do this first, my little love, and after
Hmm.
you learn it, we're going to turn it around and we're going to teach other people. So I just love hearing your story, Alexia. To me, it's like, wow, like, Lord, look at you, look how amazing you are to first help me, right? To first help me kind of get through some of this, still on the journey myself, for goodness sakes, absolutely always. But like teaching me how to do this and then allowing me to create something that then helps other people, which is like such a joy, you're just like, yay, God, it's so fun. Um, so take us like back to when you first started and then like to now. Like what are just some things that pop in your mind that have changed, or any stories, just anything that's coming to you? Sorry, legal.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that I think, we talked about this during the program, but one of the things that happened a lot was that it really spoke, and you kind of laughed, because it wasn't designed this way, but it just happened, is that it affected my parenting.
Oh,
because it's one of the areas that I really struggle with, feeling like good enough as a mom, or like, just the way I interact with my son and stuff. And so, my own childhood trauma started coming out. And I just like, I remember we talking about like love is patient, love is kind. And it was like, that's how God is. And I was like, oh, and it's like, well, I need to be patient and kind with myself. And then it was just learning, like, I need to, if I love my son, and I know it just seems so simple, but it was just ways of interacting with those around me. But I would say in the beginning, there was a lot of like realizing, wow, I didn't think that I really had as much. I mean, I knew that I didn't think a lot of like my self confidence in like, I knew there was something there with the letting God fully love me piece, and like being proud of like how he made me and who I am and my quirks and all that, like being okay with that. But I was like stepping in that direction. I wasn't quite there. And so as I went through this, it was like realizing that, and it was hard. There were times in the middle of it, right, going through some of these, asking God these questions, to hear his answers. It was like almost, I don't want to say maybe blush, but it kind of felt like, whoa, like God is so kind and sweet and loving, and learning how to just believe that's how he might talk to me. Cause I was sort of, I wouldn't say that about me for sure. Like, so it was just really great. And then so on the other end of it, I mean, I didn't want it to end. Like I wanted to, and it, I kept going, I still do it, still practice and do all that, because what I think, and I said this to you along the way too, like another piece of it, that it was so fun, I guess, to have these conversations
mhm.
back and forth with God, to ask specific questions and to just grow closer and closer with him. Like, conversations build relationship, build intimacy, all of those things. And you're doing that with God. Why not?
Mhm.
And so I just feel like I definitely, learned to embrace God's love for me more and letting it in. I don't know. And I guess the other part is just it's even like expanded into my business. So that was one of the things that, another area that it impacted. But, when you have a business, you have to show up as yourself, be willing to get on camera, be willing to talk on a podcast, be willing to put out an offer. And what I think is so important is we need to be ourselves. Like
Mm.
God is counting on us to be us ourselves, because that's how he made us. And that piece of us needs to be in the marketplace or in the kingdom. It has a role there, not so we can be pawns and puppets and
Mm.
all be clones of each other. Right. And so for me on this side of the Letting Love In program, I am embracing that, and I continue to practice that, to just pay attention to what God thinks about me, not what people think about me. Like just keep that focus on things. Um, yeah.
So powerful. It's so powerful, everything you just said. And I think that's what happened for me too when I learned this, was that I had a lot of people pleasing issues. Like I wanted, yeah, it's like we're made for love, right?
Mhm.
So of course we want someone to love us, and we can't really give away what we don't have. So like if we don't feel loved, it's hard to give love, and that's the first commandment. But um it's just so powerful when you start to listen to God like in this way, and then start to receive his love, and it does make people blush, Alexia. Like I remember teaching people this 8 years ago, just friends, when I was just starting to practice this method. And, I said, it's going to make you blush. I used to tell people that exact word, actually, blush, because I'm like, it's going to make you blush, because it was, I've been doing this for 10 years. So it maybe doesn't make me blush in the same way that it used to, because our, that intimacy has grown. But I mean, there's still things he says that I'm just like, but in the beginning, I remember also hearing that and just being like blushing, like that was the literal word, because I guess that is what happens when you feel really loved, and I don't know, I've never been married. So my only love experience besides family and friends is God's love. And it's just for me been so fulfilling and like stabilizing, like you said, where it just helps you realize who you are and walk in who you are. and enjoy who you are and like who you are and get over the things that we don't like about ourselves, and realize like, yeah, I'm not perfect, but I'm but I'm, pretty special in my father's eyes. So
Mhm.
that's important, And like you said, again, I've never been married, so I can't speak to that. But that's why I love that you're on here because you're sometimes, I think people think love means, well, I'm married and have a child. I don't need to let love in, And I'm like, but maybe this would help the other parts of your life. And so I just love that you're an example of that. And I'm the opposite. I don't have that, but I love that what you said is your husband, like you don't feel the need to like drag things out of him. Maybe you didn't say that exactly, but that's kind of the sense I got, was that you don't need to drag things out of him because you're getting your love tank filled by God, and then he's like the icing on the cake. He's your husband, and like when he says sweet things to you, or he whatnot, you're like, oh, of course you love that, it's beautiful, but it's not this like deep need that you're trying to
Mhm.
fill. And I remember God telling me one time, he said, Linz, he's so cute. He's just so sweet. But, he said, I am like the cake and your husband will be the frosting. But
Mhm.
if you don't have the cake and you just have the frosting, it it gets messy.
Yeah.
And I thought that's a cool way of thinking about it, like his love is like the actual cake. And then our husband, our children, well, those other things we desire in life, if we don't already have them, they're the frosting on top of the cake, their love is so important, but it's not the main thing. And if we try to make it the main thing, it just gets all kinds of messy.
Mhm.
All been there or heard those stories or had those experiences. So that's so cool, Alexia. Well, I want to give you space. Is there anything else you're thinking about or you wanted to share?
Um, I guess another part that was really powerful in the program was the concept of, obviously like love casts out fear. And fear is something that you just wouldn't think has anything to do with letting love in. Like you
Uh,
just wouldn't like put those two things together. But a lot of time, like I was operating through fear that I didn't even know I was still operating from.
yeah.
Because when we went through that, realizing, because my big issue, I would say, going in when it came to my relationship with God is, I mean, I thought like we were real good, like I was on this great spiritual walk, constantly talking to God, praying, all of that. But the biggest thing is that I was still in a like rule following. I've always struggled with that part and trying to earn, like behave so
Mm,
that I can be like this, good daughter so that he'll bless me, or so that, and it's like that's not what he intends. And so just being okay with him just loving me for me, not if I do something right, not earning the love. And so just sort of, and it also trickled down into like my kids and my marriage, where like you're talking about this, the husband without, the icing without the cake. And I'm thinking it just puts your marriage in a healthy place,
mm,
or a healthier place where you can love that person from a place of genuine loving them, not needing them to fill in, because when inevitably they're human, they're going to mess up or whatever. It doesn't like tear you apart because your needs are now not met. It's like you can talk about, I don't know, it just feels different. And so
mm,
I feel like that's there. And then same thing with my son. Like I don't know about other people, but I have a lot of worries. You can as a parent. And
sure.
like, is he gonna be okay? Is he getting this? Is he getting that? And it's like at some point along this journey, and God was like, you're not trusting that
Mm,
I have you guys. Like I have your son. He's in my, I love him too. I love
yeah.
him just as much as I love you. And so it was just like learning how to um let his love take care of those things, that
Mm,
I don't have to be afraid. He's got me. Jesus talks about that in Matthew 6. Like you don't need to have any anxiety over anything,
mhm,
because your father knows what you need before you even ask. Like he loves you. And
yeah.
I'm just like, I mean, I've read that before and I was, really though, like it feels like really though.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, just it just has so many facets, so I just love that. And then I would say the other big part is, like, learn to me, it's a deeper, it's like a bonus thing. of like learning how to talk to God in a totally different way, learning how to hear from God. Because I remember telling you this during the thing, I was like, this is the coolest. Because a lot of times we struggle as Christians to know when, like, are we hearing God? Is that me? Is it the enemy? All this stuff. And you go over that in the program, but then also the way you teach it, you will know very clearly. I feel like I was like, that was God. And there have been so many insights and revelation. And it's so funny. If anybody's sitting near me, they probably think I'm crazy because sometimes I'll go to like Panera and I like take my journal and I'm by myself and I'm like scripting out to God because I want to spend this time and nurture that relationship just to do it. That's something you talked about. And I'll be writing and I'm like, oh God, that is so cool. And I'll just and I'll start writing and I'm like, I did not come up with that. That is the coolest insight. And I feel like I don't even know. Like it's like I'm getting like I fully expect some wisdom bomb to drop. Like I like this is so cool. The way he just drops this information, this direction, this insight. And I'm like, it is just so exciting to me. I have to make myself stop. I'm like, okay, we're done now because I've been scripting for 2 hours or whatever. I literally did that one time. Like it was like a 2 hour thing, but it was just I needed to do it. But
Yeah.
that to me is such it's like, yes, there's the letting love in, and that was the gateway. I don't know. It's like the first step because you have to. I mean, you have to learn those pieces. You have to receive God's love. You have to understand that you are loved, all of that, because it starts with relationship, right? That relationship is so important. And then, though, like sort of it takes on and it keeps going into once you get to know somebody, if you will, like closer and closer, you start to ask deeper questions. You start to ask like pondering questions. I don't know. I just, those are other benefits that I got from the program that I think are important.
Wow, Lexia, my heart. I'm like a words of affirmation girl. You know what I mean? So I'm like, if I could pay my rent on words of affirmation, I would so be doing that. I'm like, it just is so sweet to me. So this is just, it is, and I'm not saying this in a cliche way. This is all God. Like he has done this. And I just feel honored that he's like, hey, Lens, I'm going to teach you this, and you're going to teach other people this, and you're going to teach other people how to teach other people this. And so it feels like so sweet of God, like he gives people children. I didn't have children, but he's given me this as my little child. So it's like you're complimenting my child. So thank you, Alexia. You're so amazing. So, guys, I just want to tell you real quick if you think this sounds fun, it actually is very fun. I love that Alexia said that it's fun because that's kind of one of my things. I'm like, it's going to be fun. And I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, if any Enneagrammers out there. So pretty much our like underlying tagline is fun. So if it can be fun, we are going to look for it and try to make it fun. So, but I have a mentoring program that Alexia went through and it's on my website. I'll put the link in the bottom there, and that's where you can kind of go through the whole program. You can learn the scripting method, which Alexia was referring to, and that's really kind of the ongoing thing that you'll take away from the program, and you really won't need me anymore. But so I'll put that link in the bottom, but I also want to tell you about Alexia. So she is my first student to really take this program into her business. So I have a certification in which I certify people in this content, and we're still working on it. She's in the beta program, so she's working along with me in it. But so she takes this content into her program, which her program's much bigger and has much more going on when it comes to if you're a mama and you have a calling and you want to step into it. I'll let her tell you a little bit about that. But my program will be kind of like in there as well, so that you can kind of learn all of this. So I want her to tell you about that. But we would love to talk to you if you're interested in what I'm doing with the Letting Love In specifically, or if you're a coach and you're like, well, I'd like to take this for myself, but also I'd be interested in maybe bringing this into my business. Hit me up. If you feel more connected to Alexia, then I want you to go to Alexia because she's got a specific way she teaches. She's an incredible Bible teacher. Like, I mean, this woman, like when I have conferences later, she's going to be our Bible teacher because she's so good at it. So I'm going to let her talk about what she does, but thanks for watching. And yeah, share this video if it helped you. We would love that. So Alexia, share a little bit about Mama with a Calling and what you're helping people do.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so with Mama with a Calling, I help women to boldly and confidently follow what God's calling them to do. And usually that's business. That's pretty much the focus, but I really focus on the mindset piece
Mhm.
and helping you overcome those negative blocks that are keeping you stuck, which can involve things like imposter syndrome, that inner critic, which is where the teachings that I've learned from you are put into place. It's not a complete, replica of what you're doing, but it's just using those tools in there to help people be able to process and understand, because almost every client, when I've used it with them and they've done the letting love in part of like just learning to receive God's love in that way, there's always tears, which is great. That means breakthrough is coming in a good way.
Yeah.
And it's like it breaks through some of those blocks and they're able to really have like movement in their business. They're able to um have breakthrough, to be able to make better decisions, to have a different mindset shift. That's what I'm trying to say. And
Yep.
so that's yeah. So you don't have to be a mom to do it. I have people that aren't moms, but I have coaching courses and all the things. You can check me out at mamawithacalling.com. Also a
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah, she has a podcast. Yeah, it's awesome. Very cool. Thanks, Alexia. This has been so fun. I feel so honored you'd come on. My little heart is just like, oh, it's like getting big because I love words. I love words of encouragement. So, anyway, guys, we love you. Bless you. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.